Welcome back to the Beyond the Bestseller podcast. I'm your host, Kelly Schuknecht, and today's guest is Dr. Melissa Robinson-Winemiller, author of The Empathic Leader: How EQ via Empathy Transforms Leadership for Better Profit, Productivity, and Innovation. It's quite a mouthful with that subtitle, but the main thing is the empathic leader. So, Dr. Melissa, welcome. Thank you so much for coming on and sharing your book with us. I'd love to have you just start out by telling us a little bit more about the book.
Yeah, you bet. And thank you so much for having me. Because like we were saying when we started, I think every mistake you could make, I did make. So I'm really excited to be here and get to maybe save somebody else that headache.
Yeah, I can't wait to hear about all the things you did wrong.
We're going to need more than 20, 30 minutes. So the book itself, I'm in the process of working on my dissertation. I'm doing my doctorate in interdisciplinary leadership, and the dissertation's on empathy and leadership. And as I'm doing all this research and all of this work for this, I'm like, it's great to have this academic thing out there, but I want to actually be able to get it to the people that can use it in a way that's somewhat readable and not, a big, heavy, unreadable academic thing. So that's what I did. I figured, why not? Because it's really needed, at least in my opinion. So let's get it out there.
Yeah. So let's take a step back on the subtitle. There's so how EQ. So for people who don't know or aren't familiar with that, EQ or EQI is emotional intelligence. So I in previous work places, we did the EQ test, studied we did some self-test kind of things, like understanding ourselves and how we worked with other people, and so I'm very familiar with it. But for people who aren't familiar with EQ or EQI, let's take a step back and just explain a little bit about what that means and how it affects people specifically in the workplace.
Yeah, fantastic question. So emotional intelligence, the way I like to explain it is it's like a big tool bag, because there's a bunch of different things that go in there, right? There's communication, and there's some technical skills, and there's motivation, and there's hammers and saws and wrenches and everything in there. And for a long time, empathy was put in that tool bag with everything else. Well, what I'm finding, and with my research, what I'm starting to pull out is that empathy has got to come first. Because empathy isn't necessarily about feeling, it's about connection and understanding by taking the perspective of somebody else. So if you haven't taken the time to connect and understand and be able to take that perspective of the other person, when you reach into that emotional intelligence tool bag, you don't know if you're going in for a hammer or a left-handed screwdriver. So that's really the basis of my book and why it's EQ via empathy. It's emotional intelligence through the lens of empathy first.
So that's a great explanation. Your book is specifically, it's called The Empathic Leader. So it's specifically for people in leadership roles or people aspiring to leadership roles. Like, tell me a little bit about the target audience and who it is most equipped to help.
So really, it's for those in leadership positions, both middle management and upper leadership. And I kind of have a soft spot for middle management because they're the ones that are going to be the leaders of the future. But when we think about it, we're all a leader of one. So there's definitely stuff in there that helps, just people day to day as well.
I love studying emotional intelligence and understanding that in the workplace. For me, I know that I was high on the decision-making part of the EQI test. Like, I do not make decisions based on emotion. Like, I make decisions based on, that's like one of the areas where I'm very strong. Like, I do not make decisions unless it's, something I'm very, very comfortable with. Self-regard is like one of my lowest things on the EQI test. Those are like the two that I remember specifically that were like, I don't see myself as the way other people see myself. Like I see myself as, not as capable, not, maybe that leans itself to like imposter syndrome, things like that. Tell me a little bit about, again, like for people who maybe aren't as familiar, maybe haven't taken an EQI test before, what are some of the emotional intelligence kind of areas that like the test covers, or that people should be aware of? Maybe empathy is like the focus of this, right? But what are the other things that come into play when it comes to emotional intelligence?
So there's actually a ton of EQ or EQI tests out there, and they're all going to be just a little bit different.
Okay.
Even Daniel Goleman, who's the guy that first kind of put this together in 1995, even his overall framework has changed over the years. But if we go back to the very first study, which was done in 1990, we've been doing this for 35 years. The basic definition was that emotional intelligence is what allows us to understand and control our own emotions and understand the emotions of others. And then how people categorize that can differ a little bit, but that's what it is.
Yeah. Yeah. So some of those things I remember when I took it, like I said, decision making is on there. I don't know if it's self-reflection. I don't know what the overarching category of that was. And I'm like totally drawing a blank on what all of the other sections were, but yeah, like it's in relation to yourself and to then how you relate with other people, how other people's emotions impact you, and what you do with that. So when it comes to empathy specifically, how do you define an empathic leader? How does empathy come into play when it comes to being a leader?
So specifically, I mean, because the definition I use is that empathy is understanding and connection through perspective taking. So an empathic leader or an empathetic leader, I mean, I use the word empathic for a reason. And it's not necessarily the woo reason. It's because of the studies that are out there. That kind of leader is going to be able to lead through an understanding and perspective taking of their people. So it's not going to be someone who just kind of blindly makes decisions or isn't taking into account, the ramifications of what they're doing. They're going to understand, they're going to have a certain amount of self-awareness. They're going to have done the self-reflection to understand how what they're doing impacts themselves and impacts others. And the piece of this that I think we miss most often is that there's actually a self-empathy component. Because we will tend to show empathy for everybody else before we show it to ourselves. But how do you effectively show it to everybody else if you can't show it for yourself?
Yeah. And how do you learn to do that? So that's not, it's easy to take, well, as a woman specifically, it's easier to take care of the other people on your team or the other people in your company versus being able to understand what you need and take care of yourself in situations. So how do you learn to do that?
Well, first off, we need to be clear that having empathy does not mean you don't have boundaries. So, if you're giving more than you're getting, that's a sign that there's a problem. And having empathy doesn't mean that those boundaries aren't in place. Now, when I'm teaching self-empathy, and this is one of those things that it's like, oh, it's easy, it's 4 steps, except for that it's not easy because you're doing it all the time. It's an iterative process. There's kind of 4 steps to self-empathy. And the first one is self-observation, which means you need to be able to take a step back and just kind of step outside yourself, take a different perspective, and just watch what you're doing. And in this part, you're being critical, not caring, which means that you're taking in information like a computer, you're crunching it, you're looking for patterns, but you're not assigning emotion. You're not putting judgment on it. You're not, saying I'm a horrible person or whatever in the process, because empathy and judgment cannot exist in the same space. And it doesn't matter if that's judgment for yourself or for somebody else. Once you've collected that information, the second step is self-reflection. And that's where you turn the lens inward and you start to try and pick through some of this stuff, why you may do these things, why there might be people that trigger you, why there might be situations that you're uncomfortable with. And again, staying critical, not caring. And that's hard to do. You know, we're taught to put emotional value on these things. And you kind of have to keep reminding yourself, no, I'm just looking for information. Once you've turned the lens inward, the next step is self-awareness and turning the lens outward, right? Controlling your own emotions, understanding the emotions of others. Well, how is what I'm doing affecting others? When I get triggered and I fly off the handle, what is this actually doing to all my people? Are they now scared to talk to me? Are they holding stuff back that maybe could help me and my organization? You know, have I just alienated the people that could give me the most loyalty? And now once you've done those three things, you can start to apply self-empathy. And that may mean a lot of different things. It may mean this is a perfect place for self-compassion, to really understand and give yourself the mercy and grace that you probably would give others. It may be a place for self-forgiveness. It may be a place to go back to the drawing board and say, yeah, I really need to rethink some of this. Mm-hmm. But the thing with doing those 4 steps is it's iterative. So you're doing it over and over and over and over and over forever. And that's the hard part, because practice makes permanent, not perfect.
Yeah. Now, do you teach in there then how to do that over and over and over again? Is there a recommendation on how to make this top of mind or part of your routine, that you're doing those things regularly?
I say that it's a lot like exercise. You have to find it when it's going to work for you. You have to be able to find a routine that's going to work every day and every day and every day. And for some people, it's just a matter of thinking about it. You know, human behavior is on a spectrum. So you're going to have people at this end that have like no talent at all. And you're going to have people at this end that have a lot of talent. And most of us are somewhere in the middle on that bell curve. So it really kind of depends on where you are. You know, some of us, in order to be good at basketball, are going to need more practice than we're ever going to get. Some people can just like go do it. So, you know, it's kind of like, how much practice do you need? But you still need to practice. Even if you're Michael Jordan, you still need to practice. Mm-hmm. So, you know, do you want to sit and write about it for 5 minutes in the morning? Do you want to have an accountability partner? Do you want to start being able to talk to someone who can give you the honest truth? Is it something where if you just do like little micro meditations throughout the day, you can think about it? It just depends. And that's actually the weeds that I get into with my clients, is making sure that they are able to do this and start to instill habits so that they can keep doing this forever and ever and ever.
Yeah. That's great. Well, so you mentioned when we started that you made lots of mistakes in the process. So tell me more about that during the writing, publishing, marketing. Tell me about your journey to publication and kind of what you feel like didn't go well and what you learned.
I learned a lot. The writing actually was the easy part by the time things were said and done, because the only person I had to deal with for the initial writing was me. So I could just go in and I could write and go back and edit or move things around. Obviously it still needed work, but that part wasn't so bad. The thing where things got hairy is when I had to start figuring out what to do to publish this thing, you know, who I'm going to work with, where I'm going to go to. And I made the mistake of going with somebody that I didn't really know very well. It was somebody's recommendation. And I mean, that doesn't mean that's bad, but just in this case, I didn't do the homework that I should have done. Mm. And I ended up with the first person who really was not interested in helping me publish this book. He was more interested in, taking the money and going his own way, pretty much. The next person I went to for publication thought it was a good idea to feed the whole thing to AI. And that's a big no-no when you're going through Amazon, you know, and it wasn't true to the book. It wasn't authentic to me. And so I ended up having to yank it from that person as well. And finally, the third person I went to was really able to help me with the editing and the proofing. And, you know, but by the time I worked through those other 2 people, there was, 6 months, 9 months gone. Yeah. And then once you get through the publishing process, then there's the marketing, which I still haven't gotten that figured out. But,
yeah.
But I'm working on it. It's, it's got an Amazon bestseller in 4 countries, so I'm pretty happy about that.
Oh, that's cool.
Obviously people want to hear it. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So the publishers, or were they publishers that you worked with, this first three that you mentioned? The
Yeah, they were small, like independent
Yeah.
publishers.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, how did you find those people? You said you didn't do enough research, maybe, but how did you say the first one was somebody had recommended?
Yes.
Yeah. So I mean that typically you would trust that, right? But
Yes.
then how did you find the second two that you worked with?
Well, and before I say that too, I think part of it too is I didn't understand what I was asking.
Mm,
When I'm looking for a publisher, I didn't understand exactly what developmental editing and line editing and proofing and all of
yeah.
this other stuff. So, a part of that is on me. Well, the first one, he just wasn't a very nice person, but some of this is on me for not doing my research very well. The second one, I was at a women's conference and they were there and they had the booth and they were, advertising and that sort of stuff. And that's how I ended up connected up with that person. And my understanding with that one as well is that they were a really amazing marketer, but they weren't a publisher, but they were still coming in on that end, which is why they thought they could rely on AI. And it's just not what I wanted. The product that they came up with sounded so far from anything that I would write that it just wasn't right.
Hmm.
And then the third one, I'm actually part of a different women's group, and it was recommended to me by someone that was there. But rather than just going on recommendation, I started doing my research and doing some digging, and I asked for,
Yeah.
if I could talk to one of their clients, and all of those little things I should have done the first two times.
Yeah. 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 Man, I'm sorry to hear that all that journey that you went on and all the trouble that you had. I used to work in publishing, and I ran a publishing company, and I know what that um, I know what that entailed. So now when I work with authors, I have a community for women who are writing a book, and then I do go part of my company. We offer ghostwriting services, and so now when people come to me and ask for help with the publishing process, I don't. I tell people, I'm like, I ran a publishing company. I want to have nothing to do with that. I do not want to. I don't want to. It's a headache behind the scenes for like self-publishing companies or hybrid publishing companies. Like there is just a lot. So what I do with people is I'm like, I'll just get on a call with you and I'll just walk you through it. Like happy to, show you how to upload your own book to Amazon and all the pieces that you need. And we do things like, well, we offer the editing and the cover design and those things. We can do that for people. But then when they're ready to publish, I'm like, it's your book. I'm not going to try to, take any part of that. So, but yeah, but there's a lot of people out there, a lot of companies out there that offer all kinds, the whole range of things. Another, so what we talked about was kind of maybe more of the self-publishing route or like the hybrid publishing. There's also traditional publishing. I recently had, who was it? Somebody I was talking to recently was telling me that they were talking to Forbes about publishing their book.
Ah, yes.
And I was familiar with this, so I was just letting them tell me their story, right? Like, okay. And they said, yeah, but it was pay to play, and I was like, yep, I know. And they said, do you have any idea how much it costs to publish through Forbes? And I started to say what I thought it was, and she's like, you are not even a fraction of like you were so far away. It was something like
Wow.
$250,000. Yeah.
Whoa, for real? Holy,
Maybe 200,
wow.
but somewhere in there, 200 to 250,000 to publish your book through them. So there's all these different options out there, right? Like there's
Yeah.
there's the like what I said, like, hey, I'll hop on a call with you and help you just upload it to Ingram Spark or to Amazon. That's, the easiest route if you're self-publishing. You could go through a company that where you're self-publishing, but they're doing the everything for you kind of thing,
Yeah.
or hybrid in there. And then there's traditional publishing, and some people are really they really just want that backing of a traditional publisher. And then
Yeah.
there's the whatever you would call that with Forbes. I don't know. Like I guess it's traditional publishing, but that's not traditional to have to pay $250,000.
Yeah.
Anyways, there's all of those routes, right? Um, and I think the route that you took, like you went through some hurdles to get there, but really, I think that's a great way to publish is to do it yourself through, through get help if you need it, but to do it yourself. Because I'm an advocate of self-publishing, and I don't think you need to have a traditional publisher name on your book.
Yeah.
But having gone through that experience, how do you feel about that? Do you feel good about the final version of the publishing process and what you the experience that you had with that?
I am thrilled with it. And I agree with you. I mean, because, so many academics, it's like, it's got to be Routledge or nothing, or, it has to be Oxford Press or nothing. And I'm like, but you're missing the opportunity to get your word out there, which is the point. If nobody consumes this information, then what good is it? You might as well just put a coffee cup on it and leave it there. So I'm really happy with how it all turned out in the end. And I did learn a lot. Like, well, one of the things, I mean, the person I worked with, she was very set that I needed to get a copyright on this. And, she helped me figure it out. She helped me do what I needed to do. But then not even a month after my book had been published, someone stole the whole thing. So if I hadn't have had that copyright, I don't know that Amazon would have been so agreeable to take down this other book. And they had gone through, the Barnes and Noble network and stuff as well. So yeah. Yeah.
I mean, I usually tell people like you don't have to go through the copywriting process or the Library of Congress. You don't have to, and I kind of lean towards the other side. But now that you say that, I've had not, and the reason I say that is because your book is like you own the copyright to your book when you write it. Like you own that, so you don't really have to pay more to like have it more protected necessarily, but you gave a great example of where that came in handy, right? And I had an experience a few years ago where I had a blog post that was performing very well, not a book, it was much shorter, but it was an online, something I published online that was the number one result in a certain keyword. And so I was getting a ton of traffic from it. And I noticed my traffic decreasing over like a short amount of time. And I was like, what is going on? And then I searched the keyword and found my exact blog post on somebody else's website. And I was shocked, and I reached out
Yeah.
to them and so basically they were stealing that traffic because now that content was on their site and now they were getting the traffic and my post had gotten further down in the results. Well, I reached out to them and they immediately took it down. They said we had a writer come to us and tell us that they wrote this and offered it like as a guest post on their site, or maybe they purchased it. They must have purchased it, but anyway, you just don't know what people will do with content. So
Yes. Yes.
yeah. So you have a good story to share around why it's good to have that copyright protection. What other things did you invest in when it came to like? So you have the book written, then what to get it published?
Well, so I mean, I started working with, he's not really an agent, but he's like, I can help you with getting a launch party. I can help you with getting the Amazon bestseller status. I can help coach you through, what it takes to get some testimonials and get your Amazon site so that everything looks really good. And he's been invaluable. He's been fantastic because he steered me towards a lot of different resources and websites like Goodreads and that sort of stuff that I just wouldn't have even known about had he not helped me with that. And I'm also in the process of doing an audiobook because, there's oral learners. So the more ways there are for people to learn, the better,
Yeah.
And I do invest in Podmatch, which I think is how we found each other
Yes.
because,
I'm I'm a
you
big
got to
Podmatch
get yourself
fan.
out there.
Yep. Yeah. 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 So I'm a big Podmatch fan, but also, yeah, for having a book and kind of, it's almost like going on a virtual book tour. You get to talk about your book on any podcast episode that's a good fit for your topic. So yeah, that's a great resource to share.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask about the audiobook. Are you recording it yourself, or are you is somebody else reading it?
No, I'm reading it.
Good.
Yeah.
Good for
And
you.
I'm working with the same guy that had done the marketing stuff, and he's
Okay.
helping me get it all mastered, and because he understands the Amazon and the, whatever. I let him deal with that.
Yeah. That's great. Uh, in my author power circle, we've talked about that often. One of the authors in the group had somebody else read her book because she doesn't like her voice. And then we've all been giving her the feedback that but people really like to hear the voice of the author, even if you don't like your own voice. It is more, it just feels more, I don't know. It just feels closer, right, to the author, and getting to know
Yeah.
the author through them reading it. So
Yeah.
I'm glad you're doing that. That's great.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, and I
Well,
have more and more friends that are doing the cyber thing too, the AI, was it 11 Labs or a couple of those where AI clones your voice. And I don't know if I'm just being fussy, but I think I can even hear it there that it misses that authenticity, of someone just reading it.
yeah. Yeah, it's true. I played with 11 Labs in my previous job. My boss had a book, and the audience, I thought this will be really cool if I can make an audiobook out of his voice, reading his book. And I thought his target audience would really think that was cool. So I went through the whole process of I got his voice approved. You have to get, you can't just steal somebody's voice. I got his voice approved in 11 Labs, and I created his entire audiobook for him in his voice. And I had people listen to it that worked with us, and they were like, "This is not him reading it." They couldn't believe it.
Yes.
And then I went to publish it on Amazon, and you have to say, it asks, "Was this AI generated?" And I said yes, and Amazon wouldn't take it. So after all of that work, I was like,
Oh,
"Dang it!"
oh
So
no.
I suppose people could do it and just lie and just not click the button, but I was like, I'm not gonna lie. It's an AI generated voice, and
Yeah.
so it didn't get accepted. So we had to go a different route with it, but that was a learning lesson for me. But it was really cool to generate that whole book that way, because I just knew it was going to be a nightmare to try to get him in a studio to read it, right? In
Yes.
chunks of time. I was like, this is going to take forever, and he's just going to hate me if I'm sending him, to somewhere to record, or he's going to try to do it on Zoom, and that's not going to be good quality. And then in the end, I was like, yeah, didn't work out for me. So just read it yourself.
Yes. Yeah. It's painful, but I think it's worth it because people kind of get to know you.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Totally. I love that.
Yeah.
Well, Melissa, I will link to your book in the show notes. So again, it is The Empathic Leader. And where else can listeners or viewers find you online and learn more about you and what you're teaching?
Yeah. So my website is EQVIA, and that's V as in Victor, IA empathy.com. And you can find me there. And there is a link to be able to buy the book there as well. I'm on all the usual social medias, LinkedIn and Instagram and whatever. I do have a podcast. It's called The Empathic Leader, and that one's on YouTube. And I had done a TEDx talk kind of in tandem with this book, and it was just released about a week ago. And it's doing well. We have about 33,000 views in about 8 days. So you can
Oh.
find me on TEDx as well.
Love it. Well, congratulations on a TEDx talk. I
Thank you.
occasionally have clients who are interested in that, so I put together a guide on how to get a TEDx talk. So I will include the link to your TEDx talk in the show notes, and also the guide that I have in case people are also curious about how to pursue that. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's awesome. That's really cool. Well, thank you, Melissa, for coming on and sharing your book with us and a little bit of your publishing journey and failures and learning lessons. Thank you for being a guest.
Well, it's my pleasure for being here, and thank you so much for having me. And hopefully everybody's journey gets a little bit smoother from here on out.
Looking for a community of women writers to support and inspire you on your journey? Join the Author Power Circle. Connect weekly with fellow authors, stay accountable, and move your book forward in an encouraging community. Learn more at kellyshuckneck.com.